Hi, folks. Since Thanksgiving is tomorrow, I thought I'd see what I could say about greed. And I went through Dogen's Shobogenzo, a couple of volumes of it, looking. I have an online version, a PDF version, looking for the word greed. And what's funny is that greed, hatred, and delusion are the three poisons in Buddhism, and it comes from very early Buddhism and kind of goes on down the line. It's hard to find in Dogen's work a kind of explanation of what greed means or what anger means. Delusion is a little bit better explained, but greed is sort of kind of, they just give it to you and then expect you to figure it out. Now, I'm sure if you look in the early Buddhist stuff in the Pali Canon, well, I'm not sure, but I didn't look at it this morning, but I'm pretty sure that you'd find an explanation of what greed is. I had a kind of a moment around the concept of greed a few years ago when I was sitting at a retreat called the Great Sky Retreat, a sesshin, a 7-day sesshin, that they did in Minnesota, in Hokyoji, I think was the name of this little temple that they'd established in Minnesota as part of the Minnesota Zen Center. It was supposed to be their version of Tassajara, but it never did quite blossom into, Tassajara is a big place with a lot of stuff going on, and Hokyoji is not. Anyway, Tonin O'Connor was one of the teachers there, and she, during her lecture, said something about, you can't be just a little bit greedy. And I thought about that, and I thought, she's right. It's hard to admit sometimes these kind of things because you can always rationalize it, but you can't be just a little bit greedy. You're either greedy or you're not greedy. I bring this up around Thanksgiving because, one of the things that we do here in America for Thanksgiving is we lay out a big meal for everybody, and my girlfriend's parents are getting us a big meal for tomorrow, and we'll be sitting around the table chowing down on all sorts of goodies. And there's a tendency to be greedy, and I kind of expect I'll end up overeating. I'll do my best, to curb my greed, but when you see all that food laid out in front of you, there's that tendency to just go for it. And in the sense of overeating, the reason not to be greedy becomes very clear a few hours later because you feel like crap. You're eating all this food expecting that, usually eating food fills you up and makes you feel good. Well, yeah, it does, but then if you overdo it, you're just going to be laying around going, oh, I wish I hadn't eaten that last piece of pie. So that one's easy to see. It gets harder to see greed when it's sort of greed for accomplishment or greed for possessions sometimes, greed for spiritual accomplishment. I was listening to a podcast that my girlfriend was into, and it's called Guru. And I've listened to 2 episodes, and the guru in question is James Ray something. I can't remember his name. But he got in the news, I think, about 10 years ago, and I even remember writing about this at the time in my blog. He set up a sweat lodge, for a spiritual warrior retreat. And at this sweat lodge, I think 2 people died. At least 1 person died. Maybe it was 2, because they just overdid it. And it was a bizarre sort of thing. And he's one of these people who Oprah touted as being, great spiritual person. So Oprah's got, her eye on who are the great spiritual people. And he was one of those law of attraction guys, and the law of attraction, as far as I can tell, seems to be mostly about greed. There are ways that you can kind of manipulate things. I don't even want to, put a label on it, just things, in order to kind of get what you want. And certain practices, which are often considered to be spiritual practices, will kind of enable that to happen. And it can even happen to a certain extent around Zen practice. You can get very good at getting what you want. And I think one of the reasons, or maybe the reason, that you can learn to get what you want through Zen practice is because one of the things that Zen practice will reveal to you over time is, and this is going to sound all spooky and weird, but those of you who've gotten there will probably understand it. everyone is the same person. It's not that we're just very much alike. We are the world. Everybody's the same. Everybody's literally the same person. There are 7 billion manifestations of one single human being. That's literally true. I swear to God. Do about 10 or 15 or 20 years of zazen, and you will start to see this really clearly. In my case, kind of frighteningly clearly when it first occurred to me, because I was very much into the idea that I'm an individual. I got voted most individualistic in my high school. That was one of, I don't know. I think it's because I came up with the category. Anyway, I was always the one who stood out in high school and stuff, and after, and was very proud of my individuality. To find out that I had no individuality at all was shocking. I mean, we all have a little bit of individuality, but what you come to see in Zazen is that your individuality, the thing that makes you sort of a unique person, is like this little film on top, like just this little film of scum on top of the ocean, and you're just focused on this little film of scum on top of the ocean, and not realizing, oh my God, there's this whole ocean, and not only am I not unique, I'm just this little patch of scum on top of the ocean with other little patches of scum floating around me, and we're all going, we're the scum, but we're not. We're the ocean, and everyone's the same. Anyway, my point being, these kind of meditation techniques can reveal to you how alike you are, like how deeply alike you are with everyone, to the point of being exactly the same, in which case you can become extremely good at manipulating people. I shouldn't even say that, because some people may go off the deep end and try to do that, but let me explain why you shouldn't do that. Because getting what you want, getting what that little film of scum on the top of the ocean wants, isn't going to help you. It really isn't. You think it's going to help you. I'm guilty of this too. You think it's gonna be good, but all you're doing is attracting more scum, and then you've got this mighty pile of scum that's about this big as opposed to an ocean that's miles deep, metaphorically, and you're all like, oh, look at how much scum is on this pile. It's really ridiculous, and ultimately, it is a problem. Because what you have to do to kind of get peace and equanimity in the things that you really want is to dissolve that scum. So the more scum you build up, the more you're going to have to work on dissolving once you realize that that's what you actually wanted all along, was to kind of dissolve the scum. Anyway, that's what greed gets you. Greed for spiritual accomplishment gets you more spiritual accomplishments, and you can show it to your friends and go, look, hey, I saw this, and I was in this realm, and I got to level 18 or whatever you had. But it's all something that you're eventually going to have to break down. So better not to acquire it in the first place. The more you acquire, the more you have to give up. When I had to move out of my house, this became a physical problem with my little collections of CDs and records and things. Gave it all away. A mountain of books I gave away. And it feels good, but better I wouldn't have acquired that stuff in the first place. So hopefully I'll learn my lesson. So greed is always about building up this kind of false sense of who you are, which will always become a burden to you. Buddhists in the past have taken the idea of not being greedy to what appears to most of us, and myself included, to be a bit extreme. We can look at how they lived with their vows of poverty and things and go, oh my God, let me give you an example. When you enter a Heiji monastery, I remember because a guy I knew did this, I think he was from Florida or something, and he went to Heiji, and I was there to see him off, and he was explaining to me all the rules for entering a Heiji monastery. And one of the rules was you had to get rid of your possessions until everything that you owned could fit on this thing, and it's a very special thing. I mean, it's this, but I'm going to describe it as a backpack, because that's what it looked like. It was like a backpack that hung on the front of your body and a backpack that hung on the back of your body, and they were about the size of a standard, college student's backpack. And and that was supposed to fit everything you own, plus whatever you could wear, a little hat and a robe and stuff, and then this stuff in these 2 bags, and that's it. That's all you're allowed to have. Now, of course, Japanese Zen being what it is, basically you just leave all your stuff at your parents' house and then go to a heiji with just that. But in the real traditional way, and I think there are probably some people who really take this seriously, you were actually supposed to just have nothing but that. And it forces you into a life where your dependence upon others becomes extremely clear, because you're living, as we say in English, hand to mouth. You're just living with whatever anybody gives you that day, because you have nothing stored up for a few weeks or whatever. Most Buddhist teachers and whatnot that I know don't live like that. Nishijima Roshi didn't live like that. Tim doesn't live like that. None of the other Buddhist teachers I can think of live like that. But the ones who are good live pretty humbly. Nishijima Roshi, at the end of his life, had a little I guess you'd call it a studio apartment. It didn't even really have a separate bedroom, and it had a LDK is what they call it, living room, dining room, kitchen. So it didn't really have a dining room, but it had a little kitchen and a place where his bed was, and a closet and stuff, and that's it. Tim, similar situation. He lives in this little house in Kent, same house that he lived in when I lived with him, but I think the upstairs is no longer in use, so he's just in one little room downstairs. So it's very humble surroundings. I live in an apartment with my girlfriend, not to brag on me. As opposed to when you see these sort of teachers like that guy I mentioned on the Guru podcast, his thing was spiritual warriors, I'm sure he did not live in a 1-bedroom apartment. He was making money, and he was all about making money. He was all about helping other people make money, and that was spirituality. Yeah, I don't get it. Hi, Ziggy. Ziggy's greedy. Ziggy's greedy for pets. He's greedy for being petted by me. Anyway, that's it. I don't know. I know this is rambling and weird, but it's Thanksgiving week, and a lot of stuff's going on, and I'm trying to cram these videos in the middle of it and trying to make them good. But that's what I say about greed. So don't be greedy, but as I was saying about my teachers, you can live a kind of a normal life. You don't have to go to the extreme of having the backpack on your front and back. Although I can see the beauty and value to that. I myself have never lived exactly that way, but I have done monastic practice light, I suppose you'd say, in which I pared everything down to a suitcase, and then spent a month or so with nothing but what I have in my suitcase. And in fact, every time I do a tour of Europe, that's what I do. I live for a month or two traveling around Europe with whatever is in my suitcase and whatever people happen to give me. And you can find a way to live that's kind of beautiful that way, and less burdened. So that's my advice for you in America who are partaking of Thanksgiving tomorrow. Just try not to be greedy. And speaking of greed, if you want to send me a donation to help me be more greedy, you can at the address that you're seeing on the screen below. That's how I make all of my living these days, and it's really important that you help me, but I understand there are people who are having financial trouble, so don't donate to me if you're having financial trouble, because I'm hanging in there, so it's okay. But I do thank those of you who give me support all the time. Have a good time all the time. See you after Thanksgiving. Bye.